Alrighty, hello everyone joining in and everyone joining in on YouTube later on when I post this, hopefully today. Hopefully I do not forget to post it this time. Welcome to Party Bear Mini's party stream. Hello to everybody in the chat room. Iso Zales, welcome again. I'm trying a couple things a little bit different. I got my camera in a different setup. I'm trying to do it a little bit closer so you guys can see a little bit more detail on what I'm doing. So today, we have 3 Reaper Hellhounds from their Bones Black line. I had these guys. I've had them for a little bit. They were going to be part of my demon project, but I was struggling to figure out how I was going to paint them. And then I saw the size of them when I actually opened them up, and I'm like, you know what? These guys remind me of the dogs from Ghostbusters, so I'm going to paint them as such. So for the time being, this guy will be Vince Clortho, the Keymaster. This will be Zool, the Gatekeeper, and this is going to be Harold, because I think everybody misses Harold Ramus. All right, so we have all of our normal painting supplies. We have, obviously, miniatures. We've got a handful of brushes. We've got other paints we need. I've got a crap load of paints here. I've got my wet palette, my water, and the most important painting supply of all, not scotch today. Today it is just bourbon. We are drinking Bullet, which is marketed as being a frontier whiskey. Now, these guys are going to go to match the rest of the demons that I'm doing. I've got kind of a sort of test model I've been working on, just to get the color scheme down. I'm doing it with like this bronze base and everything in with very reddish undertones. The demons are going to have red skin, but these guys are going to be much more based off the Ghostbusters Hounds, so they're going to have that really black-purple skin. So we will go ahead and begin painting. Let's go ahead and crack open the wet palette. See what I can do to stop the camera from doing too much in the way of shaking today, but I know it is kind of close, and I've got this gooseneck a little bit farther than normal, so I might have to go and find a little bit more stabilization for it if I decide to keep up with this particular setup. All right, so let's go ahead and get ourselves started. We're going to go ahead and begin off with a overall coat of Dark Elf Shadow. We're going to use that as our base coat. These guys kind of are going to have a little bit of a purpley undertone to them. So we're primarily going to be using the Dark Elf Skin Triad by Reaper. We'll mostly be using Reaper paints. I primarily use Reaper paints. I like the way they function. I think that Ann Forrester did a very good job when she designed this line. So, as always, I have my favored way to start things off with a big old flat brush. In this case, this is actually a chisel brush. I like it because it lets me get into like the fine detail area as well. And I'll be working on keeping these guys in frame. Now, this is a step where the Dark Elf Skin Triad, let's get a little bit of water in here so it goes into the recesses a little bit better. The Dark Elf Triad by Reaper is not really a black, it's a purple. Technically speaking, black never exists. Most blacks are just really dark greens. Sometimes they're really dark blues, but this one is a very, very dark purple. And I know it's designed for Dark Elf Drow skin, but I find it's just a very versatile paint in general. So we're going to, of course, just sit here and get a nice, thorough base coat. Now, one thing I did notice is that when they were painting these guys as great big pit bulls, they are not neutered pit bulls. They got great big hellhound dongs between their legs. So I guess kudos to Reaper for giving us dog balls and dog wangers. Can I say penis on Twitch? I'm going to say penis on Twitch. Penis on Twitch. This is so largely covered up, but still, in the event that you really want to see them dog dicks, they are, in fact, on here. These are anatomically correct and fully functional hellhounds. I also like the fact that they're very clearly based off of, like, Rottweilers. Like Rotties or Pit Bulls or something like that. But, you know, part of me is like, I don't think Pit Bulls deserve the reputation. I think that they need to get away from them as much as possible. They're very sweet animals. All right, Vince Clortho has his base coat on. Let's work over here on Zool. Now, the nice thing about using this really, really dark paint, I'm not going to have to rely on a lot of washes like I typically do. Even though there's so much texture here, a lot of this dry brushing will end up taking it up. And we're going to do some nice little final illustrative highlights with the Dark Elf highlight when we finally get to that. But these guys are going to need a fair bit of time to dry. So I do, as always, have a couple side projects here that I can just throw some paint on while I let this stuff dry. Go ahead and get through with the very clear indication that these are in fact boy hellhounds and not girl hellhounds. Because they may be hellhounds, but these are still miniatures, which means the bulk of them are going to be male. And as always, the music we have is the Synthwave Station from Pretzel Rocks. So if anybody in chat would like to hear something different, by all means, please let me know. I'm getting a little bit more Dark Elf shadow. I did not put enough on my palette. So yeah, I was also considering while I was sitting there getting these guys primed, that if these things, they're not really like D&D hellhounds. They're way too big. I mean, like, where's a good... here you go. That's like a normal, like, D&D size miniature. These things are huge. Like, these are giant foo dog size type things. I mean, they're the size of like a small pony. Like, they would clearly be large size, not the medium size that D&D hellhounds are. Plus, they've got this really like rocky, craggy skin. There was a while where I thought about painting them like either like soapstone jade statues or possibly like a lava with the kind of like red glowing in them. I got the Ghostbusters idea and I just had to run with that. But the I'm thinking about also doing a small article, like maybe getting a blog or something like that, or keeping a Google Doc, where whenever I paint up a monster, I stat it out in Savage Worlds, just for people who may be interested in using it in a Savage Worlds fantasy game. Especially since Savage Worlds Pathfinder is coming out, which does a good job of taking Savage Worlds and using, modifying it to simulate a more D&D style of play, which... There's part of me that like really likes the idea of that because I do like running fantasy Savage Worlds, mostly because I like Savage Worlds more than the D&D systems. But there's also part of me that's thinking if I want to run, you know, a D&D style game, I can just run D&D. But potato, I guess. All right, we're gonna let these little good boys dry a couple minutes. So in the meantime, I got just put some base coats on. I got some Terran calves that I'm working on. I did these guys, I went ahead and primed with one of the contrast ones. I ran, this is just Agaros Dunes, along with some tiger striping of Militarum green and snakebite leather to break it up a little bit. These guys are just going to get some dry brushing. So I can go ahead and get them finished while I'm working on these guys. All right. Let's see if anybody else is joined in. Nope. All right, so let's go ahead and get us some sort of color to go ahead and do a little bit of a lighter dry brush on these guys. Do I have anything readily available? I don't think I actually do have what I really would want, so we're just going to go and take this like stained ivory. It's old and I think it's pretty thick, so it'll do the job. Now, this is not how I normally do my Cav stuff because I really have no interest in playing Terrans. This is more so I want to have a couple like really quick and dirty jobs done for some starter forces for demos. So we're going to go and pull off something that I'm finally trying. It's using cheap makeup brushes for dry brushing. I've had a bunch of people recommending it to me, and I've been hearing it so much from so many different people, so many really good painters too, talking about it. This is dry brushing magic, quote unquote. And I I can definitely see the appeal behind it. I've had a chance to use them a couple times. But it definitely makes a difference. I'm dropping my palette. And of course it dropped paint side down. Let's go ahead and save my rug. Yeah, it does make a difference. I mean, it's good, but it lets you do a really, really soft dry brush. So if that's what you want to do, and that's all I'm doing for these guys, is I'm really just doing a basic dry brush coat and like picking out a couple details to do a really simple khaki camo pattern type deal. One of the things about Cav is that they, technically speaking, yeah, this is just like bringing out edges and whatnot. One of the things about Cav is they don't actually, most of the factions don't actually paint their vehicles. They have effectively it's like a screen over their entire thing because this is advanced text, so they can make it look like whatever they want. And the joke is that somewhere out there's a mercenary company that makes a little bit of extra money by advertising local businesses and turns their cabs into walking billboards. Oh yeah, that detail's a lot better on this camera angle. I just got to figure out a way to stop it from like auto focusing every 5 seconds. Let's get a little bit more of this paint. Also, side note, I really need to organize my hobby space. We've got a folding table in the studio. My fiance and I both use it because she's like an actual real fine artist. I just do these miniatures. But her side is like even, neat, tidy, clean, while mine is just an absolute chaotic mess of miniatures. I'm definitely the creative chaos type. You can see it's just like lightening things up, making things a little bit more dusty. And I think actually like this particular process for like jumping in with the contrast paints really, really helps with some dry brushing afterwards to just kind of bring the whole thing up with just a tiny, tiny bit. All right, so that's looking good. How are you boys looking? Okay, they got a little bit left in some of the recesses. Let's take a look at Harold. He's got more than the other two, so we'll keep working on the Cav stuff for now. This is really the only step that we're going to have to spend a lot of time waiting on and waiting for it to dry because we're going from the base coat straight to dry brushing. And we're going to be doing a heavy, heavy dry brush after this. Let's dry out that makeup brush that we were using. Yeah, I got a whole pack of makeup brushes for like 20 bucks. Like I think it was like a 12 brush set, and I've been using them to dry brush. Let's go ahead and pull out. Can I easily get to these guys? No, I really can't. I was going to show you the what I was doing with the other Terrans. I know I did their bases, like this gravel, was this Dark Elf Shadow. So I already got on my palette like that one. Now, one of the things that some of the older bones and some of the older cap models, because the older ones are very much still the bones material, they tend to interact funny with a lot of different types of paints, including anything Games Workshop, the contrast paints, and the spray sealer that I generally use. So after I get these all done, I'm going to be applying a pretty generous coat of a Reaper brush-on sealer to stop them from getting shiny and sticky. I've had times when I've applied my standard brush-on sealer, my standard like spray coat, and it looks super, super matte, and then a few weeks later, the miniature starts getting really shiny, and it just feels tacky. And I think, I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I think that's the plasticizer or something from the bones material coming out. I will be straight up honest, and I am rarely ever hide my criticism of things. I do not like bones. I do not like the bones material one bit. These guys are much more rigid bones, but they're still bones, and it still irritates me. And they're very early Cavs, too. The later ones, they fix a lot of those problems. Like, I know... technically speaking, this guy who's been sitting on my palette in like a halfway, like at a just beginning done state for a while, it's closer to a true PVC than the actual bones are, and I don't run into nearly as many of those problems. A lot of the stuff that I've ordered from Talon recently, it's in that newer material, so it's not as big of a deal. But some of the older stuff, like if you're cruising eBay and whatnot, I just recommend that if you're going to buy Cav stuff, buy it from your local game store or get it directly from Talon Games. I don't recommend I don't recommend hitting up eBay for it because you're going to hit some stuff from their first Kickstarters, and some of the stuff is just a little bit difficult to work with. But if you like bones, then completely ignore what I am saying. As always, your mileage may vary. This is not a science, this is an art. We're going to be doing a heavy wash over that. Just make sure we're putting... Now, a lot of times when I do this gravel, even though I do super glue it down, I still apply a lot of paint to it because the paint gives a lot more stability and staying on the base. Bourbon is good. Bourbon is your friend. Unless you are an alcoholic, in which case completely ignore what I'm saying. Don't drink. All right, so I think these guys are good enough. They are dried enough. Let's get some focus on that. Okay. It's funny how the moment it goes from black to even just like an off black, like that Dark Elf shadow, just how much things brighten up and how much more detail you can see on it. All right, so we have moved from Dark Elf Shadow. We're going to move to Dark Elf Skin. And this guy we're going to do, I'm not going to do him how I do my workflow tutorials. These guys I'm actually just, I'm cranking through them. I'm still not going to be like super detailed on them. But I'm not doing the whole apply the base coat of everything, apply the washes for everything, apply the highlights for everything. I'm not doing that because I don't have to worry about them drying as much. Let's get our paper towel. Get a whole bunch of paint in the brush and then wipe it off on the towel. Now, a lot of times when I wipe it off, I'll go in these like circular motions. There we go. Just to get it fully within the bristles like it is there. All right, and right here, now with all this really super like craggy, rocky stuff, this is what dry brushing was made for. Dry brush the gonads. This is what dry brushing with these makeup brushes, this is where it's really going to shine. Because this is giving us depth already. We're going to do a very heavy dry brush of this. Now you can already see the difference in color between these two. But this is already giving some depth and dimensionality. Now the biggest advantage I've found of the cheap makeup brushes is that they hold a lot of paint in their bristles. So you don't have to go back nearly as much like you do with a lot of like the more fine art or miniatures painting brushes. It's dry brushing, so it is a quick, fast, and dirty thing. There you go. Check out that face. Oh, what a good boy. Yeah, so check this out. I got a ton of it in my brush, and I'm going to be able to do all three of these guys without having to go back, which is awesome. Mold line I missed, but whatever. We'll just keep painting over it. Let's get this. All right. So now that we got that done, let's go ahead and take this Dark Elf highlight. Because I want to go ahead and do another dry brush before I start actually layering. But we're going to go ahead and put it in the same little section. And I am not cleaning my brush up after this. So we're going to get a little bit of mixing happening in the brush. Let's go ahead and, let's go ahead and just straight up mix these things. So we're going to get a little bit of a transition. Now this is going to be a very light dry brush. Like I am just going to be dusting. Because one of the things that can happen, and I know it happens with the Dark Elf Skin Triad, a lot of the Reaper Triads, it's a very stark difference between the midtone to the highlight. The Triads are a really good tool, especially if you're starting out painting. With this, we're going to keep it really light. Now we are going to go heavier on the face because it's important to bring out that good boy face. Now another little trick that I'm doing is I am keeping these brush strokes largely vertical, and I'm largely keeping them from the point where the light would be coming from. So even though it's a lighter dry brush, it's going to go ahead and kind of naturally may give it a little bit of some shadows. It's one of those things where it's a simple trick that can wind up making stuff look much, much better. But the faces are another story. The faces are going to get lighter than everything else, just so we can, we will naturally focus on those faces because humans are good at pattern recognition. All right, there we go. Let's put that in the water. And here we got our trio of Vince Clortho is looking better. Zool is looking a lot better. And Howard is sitting here looking like a king. Like so, Mr. Ramus, there you go. All right, so I am now going to have a nice sip of whiskey. We're going to start on our actual layering, and we're just going to do what I like to refer to as an illustrative highlight. We're going to pull out our Dark Elf shadow, our Dark Elf highlight, not our shadow. And this is going to be pure Dark Elf highlight. Now this is a very gray purple. And we're going to bring up, you guessed it, our 10-0 short liner. Anyone watching this channel will know that the 10-0 short liner is turning out to be my favorite brush. And we're going to make sure that this is nice and thinned down. Okay. Now that I got the camera closer, I can go and show you guys. See my brush? This is the key. You want to make it so that you don't see like a glob of paint in the brush and it's not like bellying, it's not like blobbing out. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to start in the face because that's where we want the most to be. And we're just going to start tracing the spots where it'll be like a raised skin. Now this step right here, what I'm doing, this is the reason why I drink when I paint. I will not necessarily recommend everybody do this, because ultimately drinking is probably bad for you, but it allows me to steady my hands a bit, so I can go ahead and bring a little bit more character while I trace all of these fine, fine lines. And these are going to be very fine lines we're doing. Now at this point you might be saying, Party Bear, you went ahead and did a dry brush stage of pure Dark Elf highlight. Why is it looking so different when you paint it? It's like, well, first off, it wasn't pure Dark Elf highlight that I did. It was actually a mix of the Dark Elf skin and the Dark Elf highlight. But also, dry brushing does not apply as much paint to a given spot, so it doesn't naturally look as intense as if you are doing these fine lines manually layering like I am right now. Okay, there you go, let my camera focus. All right, and look at that guy's little face. So much more definition in his face, just that little bit of extra layering. Let's keep on going. There's a little bit too much paint in my brush. Still too much paint in my brush. There you go. This guy does have what looks like a collar almost on it. It's kind of like absorbed into the skin at parts of it. It's more pronounced in this guy. We're going to be painting that a bronze, like a bright gold, dull bronze. little bit too much paint. Now, this is a relatively subtle highlight. I am going to go back one step higher once I'm done with this particular step. This is going to be the most time-consuming step in these miniatures, by the way. If you thrive on tedium, then doing this, like when you're doing miniatures like this, which are they're basically primarily one-color miniatures. So I'm not doing a tremendous amount of like when you do a lot of like multicolor, when there's lots of bits and bobs, that's really when the time starts building up because you have to be layering every single detail. To be completely honest, that's actually when like contrast paints can really save you time without making your stuff look too bad. I mean, if you are doing like competition painting, then completely ignore this because this is not what you want to do. But if you're doing tabletop quality stuff, as long as your main colors are properly layered and highlighted, as long as you're doing your highlighting on your main colors, that's the most important thing. The bits and bobs like leather straps, belt pouches, sheaths, daggers, books, backpacks, that type of stuff, boot buckles, you can just contrast paint those and nobody will notice the difference. If you're doing for like a real competition to really push your skills, that's when you're going to want to go ahead and really push it and do a bunch of like layering on top of those things. And it does make a big difference when you do that. Like that's when you take a look at figures and people go like, man, that thing has like, even if they don't really know a lot about painting, they'll look and say that thing's got some je ne sais quoi to it. And the people who like really know painting are going to look at, did you really do a highlight on every single belt buckle? Did you really highlight everything on that Edgelord drow? And yes, we are in fact. I am in fact highlighting his Rocky, Hellhound, Nutsack. Now these guys are giving you a really good guide of where to put these highlights. Because they got that kind of like those rocky cracks. And by just kind of almost edge highlighting these cracks, it's giving you like a guide of where to do this to really make them stand out. Because once again, we're not deliberately doing the Ghostbusters dogs, we're just drawing inspiration from them. Let's clean out our brush. While we're at it, let's go ahead and pull my bigger brushes out of the water, and let's not leave them sitting in the water because we really shouldn't do that to begin with. So now I know that, like, especially if you're not if you're new to this hobby, and I know that this looks really, really tedious, but I mean, you think about it. I've only been doing this at the moment for this particular project, we're at the 30-minute mark. And I am almost done with the most tedious step on the first miniature. let's hit the back here. Now the back, I am doing thicker highlights than I have over the rest of it. That is deliberate. All right. So we have now that step done on Vin's Clortho, and once my camera focuses, you see, it gives just a lot of definition to that guy. You just see everything a lot better. You know what? I lied. We're gonna go and put some thicker highlights on his face. We're gonna brighten these up a little bit more than we did. So yeah, so I think I'm going to go and do a blog post or a Google Doc or something like that. I'm just going to start statting out the things that I paint in Savage Worlds. So anybody who wants to do like a Savage Worlds fantasy, like I'm probably going to be doing soon at my local shop, now that we're vaccinated. All right, there you go. Let's go and just bring that face up. Oh, what a good boy. All right. We'll do the same thing with Zul here. We'll go ahead and focus on the face first. Just pull that off my brush. A little bit of water in this. All right, let's go ahead and start working on the body of Zul. So, speaking of dogs, and I think I said when I started doing this, so when I started doing the Twitch stream earlier this year, I had a buddy of mine who moved back up to Michigan. Let's go and get that glob of paint off there. We talked about doing a 24-hour challenge stream over Twitch. Of doing a Warhammer Start Collecting box. Go from the box to fully painted in a 24-hour period. And go ahead and live stream the whole damn thing. It's a 24-hour challenge out there. It's supposed to be. From a personal standpoint, this sounds like something you do for charity. So I would like to do the same thing And I think probably coming up soon, we'll be in the territory of I think I'll be ready to do that. I wanted to go and get a little bit of Twitch following up before I did that. But I think I'll go ahead and do that. I think probably in a month or two. I'll go and get a time frame done, and I got to get the donate page all taken care of. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I don't think I'm going to do necessarily... I might do a Warhammer box. I'll do either a Warhammer box, or I'll do some of the Epic Encounters boxes from Steamforged Games, because I do like those so much. But I'm going to go and get a donate page and have people donate to Save a Life Pet Rescue, which is a local pet rescue down here in sunny Orlando, Florida. And what they do is they actually have a volunteer who's a retired pilot who has his own little private puddle jumper plane. And they go and find dogs in high kill shelters up in the Florida Panhandle, in like Alabama and that area. They literally fly them down to Orlando, which is a much more metropolitan area, on this little puddle jumper plane, and find them good, loving homes. And this is a cause that is very near and dear to my heart. I love dogs. I think that we do not deserve dogs. And we got one of our babies, Tuna. Yes, her name is Tuna. And she is a very sweet and very spicy little puppy. We got her from Save a Life. And I try to donate to them whenever I can. I've donated my birthday to them and got a couple $100 raised for them. But they're always needing money because they're a not-for-profit. They're a charity. So I think I'll go ahead and do this stream for them. And I figure if people wind up donating like $30, it's a couple bags of dog food that these people doing good work wouldn't have had before. So I'll probably go ahead and put up a poll, take a little bit of a thing. I'll get a date for it. And I know, as being myself, I'm not just going to go ahead and do a simple Games Workshop Start Collecting box, because quite frankly, no. That's not a challenge for me. This is supposed to be a challenge, and it's supposed to be a 24-hour challenge. And if you guys are sitting here watching me paint, you know that I paint very fast. So the idea of saying, hey, Party Bear, do you think you could paint like the 15 models in this box to a tabletop quality over the course of 24 hours? I'm like, yeah, I could do it in 10. So I think I'm going to go and aim my sights a little bit higher. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do a... if I'm going to do a... if it winds up being that people want me to do like a 40k type thing, I'll do a full 40k combat patrol. And I'll get a full 40k combat patrol from boxed to painted in 24 hours. So what do you guys think? Go ahead and comment in the doobly-doo if you're watching on YouTube, which most of you do. But if you're in the chat, go ahead and say. Chat's been quiet today. I've had too many people watching live today. I guess they're painting more 40k stuff. That's probably the problem. Like, as much as I love painting D&D stuff, it's just not as popular as like 40k when it winds up coming to the painting crowd. Probably got to finally do my zone throughout this is how you paint yellow type deal. All right, once again, let's go ahead and do some much thicker, wider highlights on the back. All right, and that is the particularly obnoxious state of Zool, the Gatekeeper. Let's go ahead and let's get down here a little bit more. There we go. This has got a nice rocky appearance. So we have Vince Clortho, the Keymaster. We got Zool, the Gatekeeper. Let's go ahead and move on to Harold the Ramus. He's a little bit of a different base. He's not doing like the fancy roll base. He's just on some corks, so he's going to look all like stately and princely, as befit a comedian of his talent. So I think I'm going to go and put up a poll on my Facebook page. I'll keep it up for a little bit. For what you would like to see me do. I've got a couple options. There you go. That's the thing. These hellhounds aren't bad dogs. They're just metal dogs. Because there's no such thing as a bad dog. Dogs are inherently good creatures. My little tuna. That sweet, sweet little baby. Just because she has gone her entire life. I'm pretty sure she has gone her entire life without anyone even being mean to her. And it does not she is completely trusting of humans. And it doesn't even occur to her that people can be mean. And I want to save and protect that innocence for as long as possible. She's over 2 years old now, and she is in a territory. She doesn't even believe meanness exists amongst humans. It's funny because the fact that these things are dogs, I find myself doing being finer on my highlights and wanting to do a better job just by the sheer fact of the fact that they're dogs. Let's get a little bit more on this lower jaw. Let's clean out our brush. God, these really are fun sculpts. I gotta take a look at whoever did this sculpt. They did a good job. So let's go ahead and get talking. And let's go ahead and start discussing what these guys' stats would be in Savage Worlds. So they're dogs. They're hellhounds. Hounds being the key word. And this means that they're immediately going to have a little bit of baggage into what they do. So when you hear dog, because like it's the difference between like a foo dog versus a temple hound, where like when things are called dogs, they're usually called more. They're more protectors. They're support. But these guys aren't dogs. They're hounds. So if they're hounds of hell, hounds implies hunting. What's their job? It's to hunt. So let's go and take a look at see what hounds and dogs, like hounds specifically, what they're used for when they come into hunt. Hounds are, well, hunting dogs in general are broken up. They're usually either hounds or they're retrievers. And these guys aren't retrievers to me. These are like big old friggin' hounds. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be herding. They're going to be barking, making a lot of noise, and forcing people into the hunter's grasp, which also makes me think that I need to do some sort of like demonic hunter that works with them. And I think I have just the miniature that I'm going to work with. So that means that these guys, they don't necessarily need to be fast. They just need to be faster than whatever their quarry is. These are hellhounds and their quarry is mortals, because I'm relatively sure of that. The legions of hell and demons, if they're going to hunt anything, they're going to be hunting mortals. They're going to be hunting normal people trying to get their sweet, sweet, tasty souls. So, typical humanoid, human Savage Worlds. You are pace 6. Pace 8 if you have fleet-footed. I believe that's what is in the current edition. That tells me that these guys, I want them to be as fast as a player character can reasonably be. If anything, a little bit. Oh, Pete, somebody's been chatting. Crap. Okay, I have some spammers in my chat room. I apologize for not catching that earlier, guys. Let's go ahead, and we are going to have to boot some people. Ban them. And we will report. Oh God, that bothers me. Alright, well, those have been deleted. Now, if anybody's actually paying attention, chat, you won't have to deal with them trying to sell you flowers for Mother's Day. Although you should actually buy flowers for Mother's Day. All right, so let's get back to what we were doing. So I know next, I want to go ahead and get a little bit done on these collars, as well as the bases on Vince Clortho and Zool. So for this, we're getting Curse Gold, because that apparently is just, you know, an extremely versatile gold. Get a flat brush. All right, so Hellhounds. I'm going to start out by saying that the fastest character you will reasonably see in Savage Worlds is going to be pace 8, which means I want these guys to be slightly faster than that. So we'll go and say, whatever we do, they're going to be pace 9, they'll have a D10 running die, so that even if you are the fastest player character that you will run into in Savage Worlds, these things will eventually catch you. They are very difficult to run from. And if you're a normal everyday person, they're just going to be on top of you and surrounding you and funneling you in a direction. So that their Huntsman, or Huntsperson, or Hunts Demon, Hunter Demon, whatever I wind up calling the Hunter Demon, can take you out. Now, then we move on to their actual stats. I would say if something's that fast, I have difficulty of thinking things that are that fast as having like a normal agility. Quite frankly, like, you know, hunting dogs, hunting hounds always seem like they should be a little bit more agile than your typical bear, than your typical player character. So we'll go and put them at like a D8. Not like tremendously, like they're not cats. They're not going to be doing acrobatics and whatnot, but they can definitely keep their balance. I think a D8 agility will serve their purposes as, you know, have good balance, can get around, all that kind of stuff. Just a little bit above average. Smarts. With the caveat that these guys would have the A after their name, after their smarts. I don't see them as being any more intelligent than your typical dog, so probably like your typical D6 smarts with the A after it, because, you know, obviously they're not sentient, they're not thinking creatures, they're dogs, they're hounds. Spirit, also same thing. I mean, with the caveat that they're probably going to have an ability to cause fear and thus be immune to fear. Or at least the, you know, the fear that you'll get from the fear ability. I mean, I'm sure you can scare them, but you know, they are the Hounds of Hell, so they're going to have a little bit more grit than your typical dog. But we'll probably get to that with a special ability. But, you know, as far as their spirit goes, their ability to recover from damage, you know, pretty standard, decent as being anything particularly fancy in that aspect. Strength. This is where things are going to get interesting. Now, these are big dudes. I don't know if I would necessarily put them at being like superhumanly strong. I don't think that they're big enough to warrant like a bonus, like a plus to their strength, but I do think that a D12 would fit these guys well. So they're pretty damn strong. I mean, D12 strength, that can do, if you are familiar with Savage Worlds, that can do some heavy lifting. It's just not the absurd lifting that like a D12 plus 2 will do. Plus a D12 means that they're gonna hurt like hell if they bite you, or if they claw you. Just based on the fact that they can clamp down. which brings us to their vigor. I see, you know, they're hounds, so they're going to have some pretty good endurance. I don't know if I want to go ahead and say, like, a little bit higher than average, or human maximum. I think D10 fits. So we'll go and put them as a D10 in vigor. So the baseline toughness for them will be 7 without any armor. I think they're probably... These guys are bigger than a big dude, so they'll probably be size +2. Not big enough to go ahead and give them give people a bonus to hit them. Not quite a horse. That'll give them a toughness of 9, which is, you know, that's pretty darn tough. But that's not going to be, like, immediately murderous. All right. I am going to find my phone, which is right here in front of me. And this is when I'm going to have to go ahead and take a look at my reference photo. Okay, so dogs and Ghostbusters, red glowing eyes. They got big fleshy gums. So we're actually going to go ahead and paint those as big fleshy gums. We're going to go and bring some tan skin into play. And we just need a little bit of this. We don't need a lot. We're only going to paint a few spots. Make sure it's got a little bit of water in it. Tan skin is a basic flesh tone from Reaper. Paint it completely over the teeth. That's really all like the flesh tone they have on them. This is where you're actually going to see it on these guys who are like opening their mouths and have these slavering jaws. They got all these jowls. They got these jowls like my other dog, Zozo. Zozo is part Great Dane, probably part Pit Bull. We know she's part Lab. It's a Heinz 57 dog. Sweetest animal you will ever get a hold of, and she is getting old. She's got these great big drooly jowls on her. All right, yeah, look at that. Angry mouth. This is an angry, angry dog. All right, so as far as skills... I tend to do something for my monsters and savage rolls that most people don't do. Athletics. I give them a higher athletics than most people would think. I mean, like, I don't like the idea of, like, monsters falling quick prey to simple, like, agility tricks and whatnot. And that's resisted by... Well, and I honestly think they should be able to run. They should be able to jump. They should be able to move. Like, you should be afraid of them. And they should be able to get to you. So these guys are probably going to have an athletics of a D8. I don't think that they'd be wild cards because I don't think they're intelligent enough to be named characters, and I get the idea that these guys would be like naturally part of a bigger encounter. I don't think that they would be an encounter by themselves. We're gonna go ahead and move on. We got that tanned flesh. We got that tanned flesh in there, so we're gonna go ahead and combine that. If I have a brown anywhere on here, you know, let's go ahead and use this War Master Bronze. I haven't used that very much. It's a calf paint. So we're going to go and mix that tan flesh with this War Master Bronze and see what kind of color we get. And we're going to use that for the stone here on this guy's base. While we're at it, we'll go ahead and take some of this like actual cursed gold that we have to make it look even like a little bit shiny. Now this is cork, which means it's going to absorb paint. If the paint has any sort of thinness to it. And we're going to have to slop it on. That's going to be a color you don't normally get because it normally makes that color. All right, so Now that we got that in, we are going to go ahead and do a little bit of work on the eyes. So for this, we're going to start really, really bright. So I have some fresh blood. Now, fresh blood is a really, really bright red. And we're going to go and put some of this in their eyes. Now, depending on how steady your hand is, this might be all you do for the eyes, and that's perfectly fine. If you want to bring it up a little bit more, which I'm going to, make sure to get the entire eyeball. If you're not as confident, just put a dot. A dot of red in the eye will go ahead and go miles to make it look like it's like a glowing red. There you go. All right, so now I waited on this step for a reason. We're going to go and take a 50-50 mix of that Dark Elf highlight, and we're going to mix it with a tiny bit of Vampiric Mist. I might have to add a little bit more because my Dark Elf highlight is drying out on the palette a little bit. But remember how I said that we're going to go and lighten this stuff up a little bit? This is how we're doing it. So we'll go ahead and get this mixed. Take one of our crappier brushes. It should have been a really nice brush, but it didn't wind up being that way. Clean that out, clean these out, pull them out of the water because I'm a good painter and I treat my tools well. All right, so we have now this extremely light gray-purple. We're going to make sure we have some water because this has to get thinned down like crazy because this is doing some very, very fine extreme end highlights. Make sure to trace around those eyes first, and this will let you neaten up around the eyes. But then we're going to take it and we're going to go ahead and just kind of dot the areas that we want to be just like a single step up. And a lot of it's going to be around the face. So along all the areas you really want to draw attention to, like especially these like slathering jowls. Face is going to be the big spot that we're doing this on. We're going to do on some of our like longer highlights here. Just bring it out a little bit. And on the back here, how I said that we were deliberately doing thicker highlights, this is why. Because that's where the light would naturally join, so we want to go ahead and brighten that up a little bit. Now, there's not a ton of light because these guys are like hunting in the dark, but we want a little bit in there. All right, so onward to skills. Athletics, D8, because I like the idea of monsters being a little bit more able to get around a little bit more than your average Joe. I think the biggest thing, well, they'd have fighting, probably like a D6. I mean, nothing really amazing. They're not particularly skilled fighters. They're just mostly jumping in and trying to snag people, usually from when they wouldn't expect it, which may or may not be the drop, depending on how vicious of a GM you are. Yeah, take a look at that. Oh, that face, it just makes that face jump out. I love it. The biggest thing that these guys are going to have is going to be survival for tracking and notice. Now they got animal level intelligence, so they're not going to be like doing like a lot of heavy stuff that survival does. Like they're not engaging in animal husbandry or anything like that. But they're going to track like a mofo. So we're going to go and put that survival up to a D10. Because once again, they can track. And that's kind of what their job is going to be. It's going to be to herd prey and to track. And then I'm going to go and give them something that I don't normally give animals, but I think it would fit for them. I'm going to give them both Intimidate and Taunt. Probably Intimidate of a D8, Taunt of a D6. Just because it... I don't think that their main job in combat is going to be fighting. I think it's going to be distracting you and setting up the Huntsman for the kill, because that's the job of Hounds. And I don't think they necessarily need much else than that. Notice. Notice, good, D8. Done. Special abilities. Clearly these guys have a D10 running die. They're going to have a higher running die than typical, and I think D10 would fit well. Let's go ahead and get a little bit more on here. This is a little trick you can do if you want to like kind of bring your painting up a level or two. Go ahead and do, if you're, I'm not going to say do an extra layer of highlights over the entire model, because especially in guys like this, that would get really tedious, but definitely do an extra layer of highlights on the faces, because your eyes are naturally going to be drawn to that, and that's where the focal point of the model is going to be. There we go. All right. All right, so we got the next step in those eyes. We're going to go and take some Capellan Sunrise. This is another calf paint. This is a nice, beautiful orange. This is when we're going to have to get real fine. So we're going to get just a tiny, tiny drop there. We don't need much. But this is where the short liner is going to do its magic. Let's make sure we got a nice tip on it. We got some of the paint on. The key is this: we need as fine of a tip as we can get. And we are just going to go ahead and do like a tiny dot in each eye. So now they don't just look like they're red, they look like they're red and they're glowing. Alright, so let's go and talk special abilities for these guys if they're in Savage Worlds. So obviously they can bite. They're strength D12, so I think actually keeping their bite at like a standard strength plus a D4 is fine. Once again, their job is not to deal damage. They can defend themselves if they need to, and they can take down prey by themselves if they need to, but that is not their job. D10 running die, go ahead and call that out. I would go ahead and say that they should have some sort of ability to ignore movement penalties. Just to kind of like bring up that fact that they can't be stopped. I don't necessarily think that means that, like, say, you know, they don't take any penalties for a called shot to the leg or something like that. What I do think that they should have is something like, in the event that there is like rough terrain or something that would give a penalty to movement, they ignore that. So they will chase you into the brush where they can take you down. Yeah, by the way, we've got just some yellowed bone. This is when we're just going to start touching out these claws. So, and on top of that, well, we're talking about ignoring penalties. These guys straight up, I'll go ahead and say they straight up ignore lighting penalties, period. True dark vision. They can see in pitch blackness as much as if it was daylight, but go ahead and say that they, because their eyes glow, that can be a little bit of a tell. So, like, you know, this is more of like a GM thing that, like, if somebody wants to target them in pitch blackness, they can, not at full penalties, but, you know, obviously still it's pitch black. So we're going to go ahead and, because we wanted that fleshy gum, I'm going to do the claws first, and then I'm going to get the next thing. So they ignore lighting penalties. Go and have a thing where they can track by scent, you know. Maybe like add a thing where if like the Huntsman can give them an article of clothing or something you want to get their scent, then they gain like a +2 to track you. Something along those lines. And they've already got a high survival, so their tracking ability is already kind of represented. But I want it to be a little bit more special than that and have it be like, you really don't want these guys getting your scent. So the other two things that I think, I don't think, one of the things that I don't like the idea for these guys is that in the standard core book, like wolves have an ability to go for the throat, where if they get a raise on an attack roll against you, that they can just automatically strike the least armored location. I don't necessarily think that works for these guys, because they're not trying to kill you. They're trying to go ahead and make it so that the Huntsman can kill you. So instead of that, I like the idea that if they get a raise on their attack roll, they latch onto you with these jaws, and like kind of like real dogs that will do this. If their jaws lock, you're screwed. So yeah, by the way, now we're just tracing these teeth. So what I like the idea of, if they get a raise on attack roll against you, they can immediately initiate a grapple. So they're like just grabbing you and like dragging you to the ground, so the Huntsman can come over here and just smack you. That I like. And they've got a D12 strength. So, although they've got a D8 athletics, which is really the big thing that you're going to be doing for resistant grappling now. So I think that probably about covers them. Oh yeah, no, one more thing. A Hellhound can, as an action, make an ear-piercing or a Hellhound pack. We'll not say one, we'll say the pack can do this. They can emit an ear-piercing howl to go ahead and force anyone within earshot, so about half a mile, or less if it's a, in a like a wooded area or something like that. Force them to make a fear check. Not an intimidate check, an actual no-joke fear check. And I think if you do that, you've got a pretty good extra to sit there and serve with something for a bigger monster in a nasty encounter. These guys are looking good. I'm happy with how these guys are looking. All right, let's go ahead and move on to some shading. Now, we're going to go and start out with the shading for the gums and the teeth. Now, because I already painted the teeth on, we're going to go with a Reichland flesh shade because we want this fleshy gums, and then we're going to just dot these teeth with just a really light ivory. But this will cover... Oh, yeah, there you go. Oh, that's perfect. That's going to have like this beautiful fleshy gums. Oh, Vince Clortho, that is perfect for you. Let's get Zool over here. And Mr. Ramus. All right, that's that. Next, time for... I'm going to have to get up and actually get a paint, because I think I used the last of my Caribur... No, never mind. I got my Caribur Crimson. There it is. Haha, Caribur Crimson. So because I'm doing this for all of them, we're going to go and do Caribur Crimson for a wash on all of these bases. And this is going to be fun. So this is going to make it look like not just like a bronze, but like a Hellforged bronze. So I think that stat-wise, that is a pretty good approximation for Savage Worlds. I mean, it makes these things, they're no trifle. Like, they are not to be trifled with, and they're going to be frightening, especially considering they got that high tracking. You can't run from them. And in the event that, like, they're going to be there to, like, even if you, like, actually, they have to fight and defend themselves, D12 strength, they're just big enough. D12 strength, 9 toughness, that is high enough to, oof, that's high enough to hurt. But it's not insurmountable. I mean, they're still in extra territory. They're not going to be, like, super extras or anything like that. I mean, that's 2 higher than a zombie, so it's, significant, but... Right, I'm going to want to lighten this up a slight bit with a dry brush after the wash dries. The base on this guy. Oh, yeah, I want the Hellforged bronze on their collars as well. So, the big question for these guys is if they're just, the Hounds of the Huntsman, where's the Huntsman? And I think he'll be the next one that I'll be doing. And this discussion brings these guys, monster-wise, into my favorite category of monster, we're not just sitting there talking about their stats. We're talking about like making them a straight up scary ass encounter. And as far as I'm concerned, that's how monsters actually should be in games. These things should be friggin' terrifying. All right, we're actually pretty close to done with these guys. I gotta wait for that to dry, do the dry brush, but we need to go ahead and dot those little claws and teeth. Now, I did not pull any polished ivory, I don't believe. I just have stained ivory and yellowed bone. But I have vampiric highlight here, and this does a surprisingly good job because it is a really, really light off-white. It's technically a flesh tone, but considering those fleshy gums, I think it's going to do the job. And we are just going to be dotting stuff. These are going to be the finest of dots. We'll start out with Mr. Ramus here. And you know what? Let's go ahead and just a tiny, like, nothing dot on that eye. We're just going to go ahead and spot these teeth. Like, not even all of them, just the ones that we really like, those big canines. So these claws. We just want those teeth to look really sharp and pearly white. I have a tiny bit of cleanup to do on him. All right. Now let's go ahead and let that guy dry. Let these guys base dry. But yeah, we're looking really, really good for these guys. I do want to do a little bit of highlighting on that gold. So let's go ahead and pull out our short liner again. And this gold paint is pretty thick at this point, but whatever. Then we're going to go ahead and just, it's the same gold that we used before, but it doesn't have the red on it. So we're going to go ahead and just bring out some of these, like, it's a little bit, and you know, once again, we're going purposefully thicker than you think we need to. Because we have the next step to highlight this metal, Shining Mithril. Now, Shining Mithril is basically a white metallic. And this is going to be on the finest edges. Just a tiny, tiny bit. To get a little bit of that, like, just absolute true shine. All right, well, I think this guy is dry enough to do a little bit of a dry brush around him, so let's completely dry off this makeup brush. And then what color are we going to do that with? I mean, we got some stuff around us. Let's go just, you know what, let's go ahead and I got this stained ivory, and I know it's really thick to begin with, so it's really good for dry brushing. Or it's actually kind of thin, but whatever. We'll do the job. All right, let's grab our paper towel. And we're really just zapping this up, so we want it to be really light. Just give a little bit more dimensionality to this base. Not much, just a tiny bit. Soft bristles of the makeup brush will catch this nicely, and it's actually kind of picking up some of the red. Mushing it around a bit, so that's perfect. All right, last step, guys. The very last step. Dragon Black, we're going to rim these bases. That's what I do for everything when I finish it up. So you guys are going to see how in an hour and a half, average 30 minutes of miniature, we got some really cool looking Hellhounds. All right, let's go ahead and do this. And as always, this is my, doing the edge of the base, this is my ritual to finish out these bases. So here you go, guys. That is 3 Hellhounds from the Reaper's Bones Black line. Are you going to win any awards with these guys? No, these are not for, you're not going to win painting awards, but they look good. They got some character to their face, they're good models, they're good sculpts, and quite frankly, they're going to make your tabletop look chef's kiss. Especially, let me go ahead and grab the guy who I think I'm going to go ahead and use as the Huntsman. Now, I can't remember this guy's name. I know he's from the Warlord line because I have a lot of affection for that line, even though Warlord is effectively a dead game. But it's still got some cool models in it. I mean, I know they're old, they're dated, but a lot of them age well. And, you know, they're metal, but they're still relatively inexpensive. You can find a lot of them for super cheap on eBay. Or order them from a friendly local game store. So we're going to have this guy. And I think I'm going to use him as the, like, hunter of hell type thing. He's got these crab claws. He's got the wings, so he can go and be wherever he needs. Plus, he looks good next to the Hellhounds. And especially if you are just like a normal-sized dude. Look, he is real big, and he feels like something that would be perfect to get these guys. So I think I'll go ahead and paint him next week. Next week, we'll go ahead and focus on this guy, and we'll have a big old demon to go with our Hellhounds. So I hope you all had fun. I like to paint them with a little bit of like movie inspiration, so they're not just you know, a generic red or black or whatnot. They're kind of like more Ghostbustery. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed me painting these good boys. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to upload this to YouTube right away, and I will catch you next week. Enjoy your painting, stay gaming, and be good to each other. Happy vaccination, guys. This is almost over.